Rise me up with the sun. This house ain't no home.
Welcome to the world of Wexford GAA. We are joined by Tom Dempsey and Rory McCarthy to preview the upcoming championship semi-finals. Tom, we've two very interesting pairings the weekend.
Yeah, it's been a great championship so far this year, Kate. I suppose Owler's departure has thrown the thing wide open, and it's given the other teams a great belief that they can go ahead and win it now. I think there's going to be a really contrasting style type county final, because Ferns and the Shells play a very, very light type game, you know, a lot of movement, a lot of passing, and they're very, very good hurlers. Glyn and the Anns maybe are a little bit different, maybe a bit more physical. So whatever the final pairing will be, I think we will have a really contrasting type county final. I think it'll be a great game. I'm looking forward to it now. But I suppose, Rory, Owler's departure, that was the big shock. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, it was a massive shock, to be honest. You know, I did feel that Glenbarntown would put it up to Owler for a certain length of time, but not for a second did I think that Owler would be knocked out of the championship. You know, it's an awful way for Owler to lose the championship but with the last minute goal, but it was a great way for Glenbarntown to win the game. But in fairness to Glenbarntown, you know, they fully deserved it over the 60 minutes, and you know, Owler can have no complaints. Glenbarntown, you know, were ahead of them for the vast majority of the game, and you know, got caught on the line at the end.
Yeah, I think in fairness to Glenbarntown, one of the things was that the last minute goal seemed to suggest that it was kind of a smash and grab kind of a win. But in fairness, over the course of the 60 minutes, I don't know where Barntown got the belief from, because they hadn't a great game against the Harriers the last day out, but they really did hurl well, and they had to be. You would feel sorry for Owler, there's no doubt. They've been great champions, but I suppose everything comes to an end, and they've had 6 great years. But it was the most dramatic game I've seen for years in Wexford now, I have to say.
Tom, it's very unusual for Buffers Alley man to give an Owler man credit for 6 titles when they actually only won 5.
Well, I suppose, Rory, from a Buffers Alley perspective, it seemed like an awful long time. So it probably seemed like 6 years, maybe 10 years to us, what Owler had done over that period.
But Tom, they still haven't got to your record 12 titles.
No, I mean, they're very close now. They've 11 titles, so I wouldn't be betting against them passing it out over the next few years.
And you know, with that in mind, you know, they're obviously not going to win this year's county championship. You know, that last minute goal by Glenbarntown scuppered their chances, but you know, Glenbarntown went in ahead 9 points to 7 at half time, and they fully deserved that lead.
They did, and I think, Rory, in fairness, they possibly could have been a bit further ahead at that stage. They scored some great points in the first half. Young Rowan White chipped in with a point. They were coming from every angle, you know, and one score that really was memorable for me was Mark Fanning gave a short puck out. Now that was 70 yards to Brendan Doyle, straight over the bar. So it signalled a great intent and a great style of play. They also missed a goal in the first half, Glenbarntown, and possibly if they'd scored that, they would have went in a little bit further ahead than they did.
Yeah, and there was some great scores in the game, and you know, one thing that I did pick out about Glenbarntown was the amount of different people who scored for Glenbarntown.
Yeah, there was scores coming from all over the place, and John Lacey was superb. I think he got 3 points from play, scored every free. Young Porrig Wafer came in and got a vital point with about 10 minutes, no, it was less, about 3 or 4 minutes to go, and that really was important because it brought it down to 2 points, and as everybody knows, the 2-point lead is not a good lead to carry into the final seconds, particularly when you have Mark Fanning standing over a ball maybe 30 yards or maybe 70 yards from goal.
Yeah, like even though Glenbarntown did end up winning, you'd have to admire how Owler dragged themselves back into the game and actually went ahead and looked like they were going to win the game.
They did. I mean, they're such a great team, Rory, that they're only going to be beaten by a smash and grab kind of a situation. And really, when the 70, it was the most dramatic thing I've seen for years, but when they missed the 30-yard free and they got the 70, Owler probably thought they were out of the woods. But Mark Fanning flighted the ball in perfectly. It landed about 5 yards from the goal, and if it got any touch or went in any other direction, it was going to give Conor O'Leary no chance in the goal. And that's exactly what happened as Mick Doyle, I think it was Mick Doyle, got his hurled to the ball. And the rest is history, but it was the most dramatic thing I've seen in Wexford hurling. That last 35-40 seconds from the time Mark Fanning didn't score the 30-yard free to the time the ball ended up in the net was as dramatic as anything I've seen for many years in Wexford.
And something very memorable, Tom, is the scenes on the field after the match. You know, the Glenbarntown people running out onto the field, the subs, the mentors, everyone running out onto the field. It was like the scene from winning a county championship, so it did mean a lot to Glenbarntown.
It did mean a lot, and you know, they put a lot into their hurling, and they're a dual club, but they put a lot into their hurling. And after the Harriers game, Rory, you know, nobody saw this coming. Like, everybody was saying, Glenbarntown, God, isn't it great that they're not going to be playing relegation this year? But by God, I tell you, they really came out and showed their true colours in that game. And if they can repeat that type of hurling, there's nothing to say. A lot of people see them as forward favourites, but there's nothing to say that they can't do a little, go the whole way this year.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, I mean, any team that beats the county champions of the last 5 years will surely have a say in the county championship. But I think, Tom, speaking about that game, you can't let it go without mentioning Michael O'Regan. His performance centre half back, to me, I just thought he was a colossus.
He was magnificent. He plays a kind of a sweeper's role, Rory, and for about 20 minutes in the second half, he totally dominated the play. Owlert were tearing their hair out, kind of trying to get something done at that stage, but I think O'Regan was the one main character in the victory for Glenbarntown.
Lads, that was a great synopsis of the Glyn and Owlert game, but I'm sure the Ans will have something to say about that. What about the Ans' performance against Buffers Alley?
Yeah, Kate, the Ans were very impressive in their victory over Buffers Alley. They went in a goal ahead at half time, they won by 2 goals, and had they taken the chances, it would have been a far more comprehensive victory, Tom.
It would. I mean, the Alley started well, Rory, and I thought Shane Granels was very impressive. He got 3 very, very good points. Andrew Kenny was hurling well at that point, and apart from the fantastic goal that Liam Og got in the first half, there wasn't an awful lot between the teams, but the second half really didn't play out well for the Alley. The Ans dominated the middle third of the field, and Red Barry was given an exhibition in the first half, but he played very, very well in the second half as well. We just didn't seem to be able to get the ball past our half back line. As a result, there was an awful lot of chances created in the other end. The Ans, probably Mug, should have had another goal. They missed a 23 or 4 yard free, and they had a number of wides, and that's something they're going to have to really work on if they're going to progress any further.
Yeah, I was very impressed with how Darragh Ryan employed Red. I felt he did an awful lot of sweeping in the first half. He got on the ball a lot, and in fairness, he does give that very intelligent ball to the 2, clinical forwards inside.
And I tell you, they seem to create a lot of confusion in the Buffers Alley defence as well, because the lads, I do believe saying that young Kevin Roach has been one of our best players for the last couple of years, and he wasn't available to Buffers Alley. He was a big loss out of defence, but there was a lot of confusion created in the Buffers Alley defence, and whatever way the Ans were moving, they were kind of not playing man-to-man in the forwards, and it was confusing the Alley backs as to who should be picking up who, and a lot of their chances came from that, and I'd say they created 3 or 4 goal chances in the second half.
Now, I know Aidan O'Connor brought them up from intermediate. It's going to be a tough question for you now, Tom, but when do you see Buffers Alley really threatening to win a county championship again? Is it in the near future? Have Buffers Alley good young lads coming through?
There's no doubt that, and this year we had young Ross Donoghue and John Farrell, 2 minors, were introduced into the senior team. It's not going to be easy, but a lot of teams now, and if you were talking to Shane Carley or any of the managers around, Iggy Clark, they'll tell you that there's a small gap between actual relegation, maybe sometimes making a county semi-final or a county final, so they're not that far off. They didn't hurl well in the last game, they hurled very well against Clubon. It's going to take up a couple of years, but Buffers Alley, like Owlert, like Rathmuir, like some of the traditional powers, Rory, they're not going to go away, and hurling will be always in their blood, and they'll always be contenders in my book. I don't see intermediate being a problem over the next few years anyway.
Good. From a personal perspective, I did feel that it was, of the 4 quarterfinals, Tom, again it's just my opinion, but I did feel that it was probably the worst hurling. I thought it was very stop-start. I thought there was an awful lot of frees in the game. The two styles, there wasn't much good forward play on show, and I do think that for the next day, the Ans will have to, improve their style of hurling.
Well, I suppose Buffers Alley and the Ans are 2 big physical teams, and there's a lot of hitting there, and maybe not an awful lot of open play. But I do think as well, Rory, that Wexford Park plays a bit of a factor. There's no bounce in the ball in Wexford Park. I'm not blaming anybody for this, but certainly the better games I've seen this year, and the games in Belfield, have been of a far higher quality than the ones in Wexford Park, and I think that's because of the bounce of the ball. There doesn't seem to be, it's like a sponge or something in Wexford Park. The ball doesn't seem to bounce on it, whereas down in Belfield the ball seems to be flying around the place, and maybe a little bit of it had to do with the pitch as well, because I haven't seen too many brilliant games in Wexford Park this year.
Rory, you said earlier that the Ans are the 2 best forwards in the county. You're both living in Glyn. Probably a little bit of inside information there. Like, where are the matchups going to be in this game?
Well, I do think the Ans have 2 of the best forwards in the county. Might not necessarily be the 2 best, but they will certainly play a big role in the outcome of this game. The 2 of them have been instrumental in the Ans' progress so far this year. The 2 of them have a great year with Wexford in their progress. But I do think, the likes of Liam Og, marking young Jack Fenton, full-back for Glenbarntown, if Jack handles Liam Og, well then that'll go a long way to Glenbarntown winning the game. But I do fear for Jack because, you know, he's a young chap. He's straight out of minor. Lee Moog has that couple of years now of experience playing with Wexford. He's very fast thinking. He finishes well. He scored 1-4 the last day. Could have got, you know, he could have got 3, 5 or 6 the last day. So that is a key area for Glenbarntown. The other, Dee O'Keefe is the other man playing centre forward, and Tom, Dee O'Keefe on Michael O'Regan, that is going to be one of the key battles, and it'll all down to Shane and how he deploys Michael O'Regan basically.
I suppose we put plenty of pressure on Shane anyway, Mac, won't we? But I have to say, young Jack Fenlon is one of the finds of the year. He's met every challenge with relish, albeit this will be one of the biggest challenges. Michael O'Regan, I think, will play a sweeper's role, you know, and Glyn may look at maybe bringing somebody back on the likes of Dermot O'Keefe for an extra player back, because O'Regan is a great player to kind of mop up everything, and that's going to be important in cutting out the supply of ball to the inside line, and I think that's going to be key for Glenbarntown. Up front, I suppose a couple of the problems we're going to have, Mac, is that Gary Moore's injury, will it be okay? Craig Doyle is still on the injury list, and Glyn have taken a fair few rattles from an injury point of view this year. But I think overall up front that Glyn probably maybe have a more varied type of a forward line than St Anne's, but it's going to be intriguing really, and I do believe that the big matchup will be Dermot O'Keefe v centre forward and Michael O'Regan.
Yeah, and we spoke about Red Barry already, Tom. Dara has deployed him basically as a sweeper, and he did pick up a lot of ball the last day. We could come to the situation in this game where we've 2 sweepers, one on each side, and Glenbarntown do like to play with a sweeper. You know, they have done it in the past and could do it again. How do you see, you know?
I think it'd be very dangerous to leave Red as a sweeper, because he is such a great way of reading things and that. And if they match up the way, maybe if Red goes to be left or right half back, as he possibly played a lot of the game last day, he will be directly confronted by Dara Barron. Dara's been away for a couple of years, and I tell you, he's been a real find for Glenbarntown this year. Plenty of pace, and I think that, you know, the Anns will want to be very, very careful to leave that young fella go out on his own as well, because he really is working hard and he's able to take a score as well. But there's so many intriguing battles, and again, we're back, I suppose, Mac, it's a real tactical battle as well, and that's what's going to make it even more enjoyable next week, just to see what way the lads employ. I suppose at the end of the day, one big player, I think, and he's been a big player for them all year, is Michael Doyle, full forward. He was superb in the semi-final against Owlert, and I think that they're going to have a big job, St Anne's, in trying to counteract that player.
You have touched on it, Tom, and you know, overall Glenbarntown seem to have a more balanced forward line. Like, if I'm Shane Carley, I'm worrying about basically, if I stop the 2 boys from scoring, you know, I have a serious chance of winning this game. But in Dara Ryan's shoes, he nearly has to keep an eye on all 6 forwards, because they all did chip in very well the last day. So, you know, that's a big positive for Glenbarntown going into the game. But I think as well, you know, Glenbarntown are very physically strong all over the field. And I know the Anns have the Doc and Johnny Fogarty, and, you know, they are big as well. But, you know, the Anns do, or Glenbarntown do have that physical presence that might just, you know, sway the balance for them. Well,
they have, but I have very rarely seen the Anns beaten in a physical battle as well, Max. So I wouldn't employ that tactic of going forward maybe to play a physical game against them. There's a lot of very, very good forwards with Glenbarntown, but what we need is for them to click on the day. You know, they can be up and down, but they really need to have big performances from some of their players. And, you know, John Lacey's been fantastic all year, and I think he can lead the charge, because his battle with Aidan Rochford is going to be something to watch. They've met the whole way up, underage, under 21, minor, and it's going to be something to really watch as well. Plenty of big battles out there, Mick.
You've summed up the first semi-final pairing. What's your prediction going to be, Tom?
Well, it's going to be a tough one to call, Kate, but for me, I think the Anns have the overall experience. I think Glyn have a few injuries, and that may tell against them. So it's the Anns for me, but you probably won't agree with me, Mac.
No, I do, Tom. I agree. I do think the Anns will shade it. I think it'll be a very tight, tough, dogged match, but I do think the Anns will come out on top. Saying that, Glenbarntown have beaten the county champions and have dominated underage for the last years, but I don't think they're going to do it this year.
Well, lads, I'm going to go with Glyn on this one. Join us in part 2 for the second semi-final pairing.